Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Matt, and today I wanted to talk about picking up vocabulary through reading rather than traditional flashcard systems like Memrise or Anki. And when you first started learning a language, chances are you picked up that initial vocabulary through a language learning app, or maybe that beginner textbook. And maybe you graduated past that into Memrise or Anki or some sort of flashcard system, some sort of spaced repetition SRS system. And while I really like SRS systems, they're really great ways to learn a lot of vocabulary, especially at the beginner and the intermediate level. I do think there becomes this kind of point of diminishing returns with those systems. And it makes a lot of sense to kind of move past that eventually and move to systems like reading for picking up vocabulary in a more compelling and interesting way, and ultimately more effective way as well. So, with flashcard systems, like I said, as a beginner or intermediate, it's a great way to pick up vocabulary. Those first 1,000 most common words, the most common adjectives, the most common adverbs, prepositions, things like that, or even specialized vocabulary that you're really interested in. But that being said, too, at some point you start kind of noticing that you get this period of diminishing returns where you're learning specialized vocabulary that you're really not encountering a lot in your conversations with others or when you're listening to material or reading in the foreign language. Maybe you're like learning words about the hospital, but it's like, how often are you actually using or reading those words in your kind of daily language learning anyways? And that being said, too, a lot of these systems also have just a ton of words that you end up having to review, like whether it's watering with Memrise or whatever. And a lot of those words, too, become very difficult to get into your long-term memory, into that reflex where you just kind of process that word immediately. And at that stage, I think it really is pretty beneficial to move past those systems, or at least ramp it down, and try out reading as a primary vocabulary method. And really, when you read in a foreign language, it really does so many things for you, even outside of just vocabulary acquisition. So, one of the great things about reading is that, when you're reading, you're going to encounter the most common words in the language anyways. So, the 1,000 most common words that you picked up through a system like Memrise or Anki, you're going to see that in the reading that you're doing. So you're going to see those 1,000 most common words again and again. You're going to see those common verbs, those common adjectives, adverbs, etc. And it's going to almost act like this kind of natural review system where you notice that word and you see it again and again. And it kind of helps to keep reinforcing it, keep reviewing it until it's really in your long-term memory. And it's just kind of this instant reflex where you notice it immediately when you're listening, or you can kind of speak it and say it out loud on command. In addition, if you kind of read very specialized material, so maybe let's say you're really focused on reading a particular subject matter, whether that's politics or a certain time in history, you're going to see that vocabulary related to that subject again and again, whether that's words related to politics, words related to food, travel, etc. And so you kind of get this kind of flashcard system in the context of reading. And then in general, too, reading can be a lot more fun and compelling than using a flashcard system, where it can get very overwhelming and just trying to water and review all of your words and learn all these words that maybe don't make a lot of sense. And then, when you're reading in a foreign language, whether that's newspapers, books, whatever, it's just a lot more interesting, a lot more fun. And then you'd be actually really surprised at how many words you'll start to pick up once you have that base foundation of the language, right? Once you have a lot of the most common words, your vocabulary acquisition will really start to ramp up significantly, and you'll be picking up those words into your long-term memory and that reflex, those common words, very, very quickly. In addition to even the words that aren't very common, you're going to see them, just not at the same rate as those very common words. And so over time, you might look up a word and then forget it immediately, but over time, you're going to get that word into your long-term memory because you're just going to be reading a lot. You're going to be reading a lot of compelling material. It's going to be fun, but you'll see those words, whether it's verbs, adjectives, whatever, and that vocabulary acquisition is slowly going to increase over time. And even outside of vocabulary acquisition, reading has so many benefits. From a grammar perspective, it's huge as well because you're actually seeing a lot of the grammar concepts in practice, right? It's not just reviewing grammar, right? Reviewing grammar tables or doing grammar exercises like you would do in school. You're actually seeing the grammar in practice, in the text that you're reading. So you're seeing word order again and again. It helps to reinforce how to use word order in the language. You're seeing irregular verbs, you're seeing the tenses. And of the words that you're learning, especially verbs, you're seeing them used in concept and context outside of just the infinitive that you might have learned in a flashcard system. So you're seeing that word in the context of using it as we or I or he, or seeing it in the future tense or the past tense, or the irregular verbs. And so you're getting that grammar component as well as a lot of word acquisition. And then of course you're just getting better at reading in of itself. And this can really just be a huge thing for your language learning process because now you're really increasing your vocabulary a lot. You're seeing grammar in context and you're having a lot more fun, right? You're reading literature or subject matters that you find interesting, and it can really be a big, make a big difference in your process because, like I said, a lot of that language learning through SRS systems can be kind of boring in the end of the day. You're just using kind of this review, this flashcard system, and like I said, there is a benefit, but after a while, you want to try to get past that and move into compelling and fun material and ultimately a longer term, more effective method for vocabulary acquisition and getting better at the language. So this is what I had to say on the subject. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.